Hey everyone, Temporal here, and we are reviewing the experimental patch notes that just dropped for Overwatch. I have not looked at these yet. I haven't seen more than this top line here when I was making the thumbnail, so I will be looking to these, analyzing these. For those of you that don't know, I am Temporal, former top contenders coach, top 3 finishes, multiple regions, etc. So I have some idea what I'm talking about when I look into this stuff, when I talk about this, and I'll talk to you guys, see what your thoughts are as well. We'll talk it through. But we'll start with my sharing what the patch notes are, going through those, and then providing some analysis. Hey, Mentos Frost. Okay, so in our experimental patch notes, we have first up pure updates, only an experimental, but these almost always all go through, so that's no surprise to us. Doomfist Meteor Strike now speeds up the cooldown rate of his abilities by 100% while in the air. Okay, so what that means is when he presses his Q button, he's going to go ahead and go up into the air like he usually does for Meteor Strike. And what Doomfists have traditionally done with their Meteor Strike is they go in hard. So they use all of their abilities offensively. Doomfist's standard way is, hey, sort of go in with slam, little fist pump shoot someone, uppercut, fist pump shoot someone once or twice, and try to punch out. At higher levels, that's traditionally what he does. It can get a little more complicated with rollouts where he can sort of use his punch to slide across something, then slam, fist pump shots, uppercut, fist pump shots, then just stall for a second or so and get out because you used your punch on the way in, and punch is only a 4-second cooldown. But that's traditionally how Doomfist plays. What happens is when you have Meteor Strike available, you can be greedy, and Doomfist can slam in, uppercut, and punch. He can use all of those abilities and then rather than try to get offensive value out of his Meteor Strike, what he can do is he can go, I'm going to Meteor Strike. And there's the threat of him coming down on someone and eliminating them with Meteor Strike, but really what's going on is he's using the Meteor Strike and the fact that he's removed from the map, he's not a targetable hero, you can't hurt him when he's like that, to wait on some of these cooldowns that he used to tick back. So when he lands, he'll almost certainly have one or more of these abilities back if he maxes out his wait time. And he might still try to hit someone with the Meteor Strike, but those people had forever to react to the Meteor Strike because he was letting his cooldowns charge while he was invincible in the air there. So that's fine, and then he gets to do, one or two of these abilities again and then get out, either using this half of the combo to get out or this half of the combo to get out. Sometimes you will see punch in and then uppercut and then slam out, which is fine. You can do it like that too. That tends to get done more at lower levels. Some of it gets rollout specific though for what geometry you can use of the map. So the idea here is an interesting one, which is if you double the rate at which he gets his cooldowns back while he's in the air, he's going to be able to, if he does that same greedy combo of use all three of his abilities while going in trying to get eliminations, he's going to be able to much more quickly deploy his Q button from the sky to do damage, to try to get someone, and then potentially still have those abilities back to do more. So this could be a bigger buff than we might think. Like this could be, hey, rather than his ult is sort of he gets to use a third ability and then kind of a somewhat non-threatening ult. Zens might disagree, I know, but a mostly non-threatening ult, unless you're comboing it with things, it's going to turn into, hey, he gets to use, let's think about this. He uses 3 abilities offensively, then he uses the ult pretty quickly offensively, so there's a 4th ability, and then he gets to probably use, maybe not all 3, because we do have a long cooldown on, 2 of his abilities there, but he gets to use at least 1 more ability immediately, and then have 2 to get out. Probably gets to use all 3 abilities, at least 2 or 3 of them, so this becomes a pretty fast 7 ability combo as opposed to the sort of you get to have 3 abilities and then sort of a non-threatening ult. It's not going to make the ult way more threatening or anything like that, but I like what this potentially does because even though Doomfist is super annoying, and even though Doomfist suffers from a design principle of he tends to be sink or swim, where either he's really, really powerful and must pick, or he's kind of garbage. Even though he suffers from that, and this may put him into the must pick category, it's been a while since we've had a real Doomfist meta, a serious Doomfist meta. B, he's kind of been garbage for a while. Is this likely to make it where he's no longer a sink or swim hero, where he just wins for you or he feeds? No. This isn't fundamentally going to change this design, but this does have real potential of making him powerful. For, Zen players out there, some of those backline supports that can't protect themselves from him very well, I'm sorry, but this does look like a meaningful buff. I do not expect this to be nothing. That said, I could be overestimating mentally how quickly he's going to be getting back that slam and uppercut while he's in the air there. Okay, so now we're going to move along from here. And again, I don't think Doomfist has been powerful, so this doesn't particularly bother me. And then we have another hero who hasn't been powerful. Let's hope this is a buff. Shuriken, damage increased from 28 to 29. About time. Dragon Blade damage reduced from 120 to 110. What does that do to breakpoints? So developer comment, shuriken damage increase doesn't sound like it a lot, but it crosses a threshold or breakpoint against summoning targets, enabling them to be eliminated when with one less attack landed. To help balance this out, primary weapon, we're reducing the damage of Dragon Blade ultimate, which is also a breakpoint against some targets when being damage boosted. So what is our breakpoints here? So 28 to 29, but remember, he throws 3 shuriken, so if you're hitting triple headshots, it's more than that, and it's more than 3 damage because you've got a multiplier there. So that is potentially a big deal, but it becomes a question of which breakpoint did this change? Which breakpoint did this change? Did this change a nano breakpoint? Did this change a mercy boost breakpoint? Did this change a breakpoint only in terms of the number of slashes it requires to take down a tank, or did this do it with squishies? And I may have to do some math. I'm probably going to come back to this one because I don't want to do the math on the stream, which is really my way of saying I'm stalling for someone in chat to do the math for me. But if no one does, I'll come back and do the math on stream, and we'll talk about exactly what this means. Conceptually, though, taking a little bit of power out of his ult to give some more power to his neutral game is something Genji players have wanted forever, and Genji has not been a terribly relevant hero for a long time. So I like this. I especially like this since they'd already taken power from his ult and not really gotten him much with the, hey, we're reducing the charge rate of his ult, and that hurt him, and that hurt him in a way that he just couldn't keep up with Anna's for Nanoblade anymore, and it sort of made Anna's weight too. It was sort of an indirect nerf to Anna in a lot of ways. So looking at this looks off the hand good to me, but we'll have to come back and do the math. It changes breakpoint with 225 heroes, I believe. I don't think Nano Blade can dash swing combo them down anymore on the 225s. Okay, if it's specifically changing the breakpoint on the 225 heroes, that's fine. That's reasonable to me. It helps that 225 health number be a little more meaningful. My one objection is that Kree is in that 225 health pool hero, and I'm not sure Kree, who already has Flashbang, should have that many defenses against Genji. Like, that matchup is already stupider than it should be. Like, McCree can make a lot of mistakes in that duel and still not lose. Too many for my taste. And now you have hey, he's got room to react, to spend more time, to not immediately go down to a nanoblade, so there's less pressure on him for the flashbang, which means he's less likely to make a mistake on it. I don't like that specific matchup reason, but conceptually saying, hey, the 225 heroes are now going to survive 1/dash in that unless there's other outside damage or there's a second boost going on, that doesn't bother me, and that seems like a totally reasonable price to pay for an upgraded neutral game, which will allow for some breakpoints in terms of combos, which he can be scary with, and will also allow him to charge the Dragon Blades faster, because he does more damage with his neutral game now, and that's not being compensated here for with a ult charge nerf. He already got one of those the last time he was adjusted. So I think I like that. I don't like the specific Genji McCree thing, but that's its own issue. I don't think the Doom. No, I'm not going to get to chat yet. I will get to chat. If you guys have thoughts, questions, comments, you can jump to the front of the line with a super chat, and I will interrupt my analysis and read through for that. But normal chat, I'm going to come dag you guys at the end of this. But I will discuss. I will talk to you about your thoughts. I'm definitely interested. Moira, Bite Grasp, self healing increased from 20 to 24 health per second. Okay. Moira's self-healing increased from 20 to 24 health per second from her Biotic Grasp. Developer comments, Moira has recently been underperforming a little bit. The increase to her self-healing with Biotic Grasp will increase her survivability in range to recharge her healing resources. Not the change I'd have made. So it's annoying because it just makes her more annoying to duel at low levels. Like, I wish rather than doing this, they'd started with reverting the. I just wish they'd started with reverting the resource regeneration thing that they did to her. That would have been my preference. Start with reverting that because it was a bad change. And then I don't like this because this is going to affect the bottom of the ladder more than it's going to impact the top of the ladder. And she's already a fine hero at the bottom of the ladder, whereas she's not a very good hero at the top of the ladder. She's not. And this is going to make it super annoying when she's playing against McCree's, soldiers, tracers, Genjis, people low on the ladder who can't handle her very well, where they can handle her at the top of the ladder. And the reason they can't handle her is because she has auto lock aim. Her having auto lock aim lets her put a lot of her thought, a lot of her effort into her movement, and it's already hard for these people lower on the ladder who have worse aim to hit her. So this is like the exact opposite of the kind of change you want to make, where it's like, congratulations, we're making a hero who's fine at the bottom of the ladder better at the bottom of the ladder, and we're in theory making someone who's worse at the top of the ladder a little better, but I don't expect it to make a difference at the top of the ladder. So like, bad change. I do not recommend this. I'm not saying Moira doesn't need a buff, but the first place I'd go for a Moira buff would be reverting the last nerf. You could still look for a buff beyond that, but this isn't it. Okay, Roadhog now passively grants 25% less ult charge. Just generically. Roadhog just generically grants 25% less ult charge. I don't know about that. I get that's probably them going, hey, we can experiment with our game. We can experiment with Overwatch 2 for Overwatch 2 stuff. That's probably what's going on here. But that's really hurting Roadhog's drawback. Like, Roadhog's always sort of had you have to balance his scale. You have to accept that on one hand, he feeds a lot of ult charge. On the other hand, he can hook one shot, take over stuff with, a hook. Hook is really good. Like, that's sort of always been his balance. Like, you win a lot of team fights by hitting hooks to start fights, but if you're not hitting hooks, and just in general, you feed a lot of ult charge, so if you're not getting hooks done, the other team gets to crush you with ults fight after fight after fight. So it's like pick-off versus losing the ult economy if you're not getting the pick-offs. Like, that's sort of his balance, and I don't really like taking his design philosophy away from that. I like that. That said, they've attacked his pickoff potential. They're never clear on whether they want him to one-shot or not, so I do understand maybe it makes sense to attack this a little as well, since we're unclear on whether he's allowed to one-shot heroes or not. But, like, that's a lot. That is a lot less ult charge that he feeds. Like, we already gave him damage reduction during Take a Breather. Could we also give him a similar amount of ult reduction on top of that while using Take a Breather instead? Like, be like, hey, he takes 50% less damage during Take a Breather, and on top of taking 50% less damage, which means he feeds less ult while doing that, he feeds 50% less ult, so he's feeding like nothing during Take a Breather. Could we have done that rather than just make it a constant passive? Because that's a lot of reduced ult charge. And I know he doesn't have a barrier, but like Reinhardt doesn't have a hook. Pin, which is Reinhardt's equivalent to hook from a pickoff potential, is nowhere in the same world of good tier as hook. That's too much. I'd have preferred to experiment with a lower number here if we were going to do this. If you'd come out as 10 or 15%, sure, that's a lot right there. Okay, developer comment, Roadhog tanks for his allies by being large and threatening with high durability. No, that's not what he does. Which draws a lot of fire from the enemy team. No, he tanks for his team by being an extreme threat. Roadhog is over here while his team is over here, and the enemy team is, sure, we can go with that, is right here. And that leads to the enemy team having to constantly be aware of what's going on over here. Is Roadhog about to peek us and one-shot us? Roadhog is using this thing called walls. that he can peek from behind. It's the threat of his hook that Roadhog makes space with. It is not Roadhog's body that he makes space with. It is not, oh, they're actually shooting at Roadhog. The skill with Roadhog is, yes, hitting the hooks and hiding the proper follow-up after the hook, but the skill is going, hey, I get you with the hook from the angle. I don't feed a lot while I do this. I have this, and it's not I can just take a lot of damage while I hook you and still eliminate you. If your hero can do that, your hero is stupid. The point is, hey, the threat of me being here, me having my hook off of cooldown, makes the other team constantly have to pay some level of attention to you, like, well, what are you going to do? Well, what are you going to do? And the threat of that hook tanks attention, which then doesn't convert to damage because there's a physical wall between him and the other team. This scares me because it's, again, it's language from developer comments that suggest that developers don't understand their game, which is always concerning. We're reducing the amount of ult charge he provides to better enable him in this role. That's not his role, without as much of a downside to his own team. That is potentially scary. Like, if you design a character that could go, hey, I walk out here tanking damage for my team in front of my team as like a wall for them, and I can walk out in front and hook someone in and bring them back and eliminate them, and even if I can't eliminate them, because I'm tanking in front of my team will 100% eliminate them because they've been pulled in, as opposed to them having been pulled over here, as opposed to me having to work skillfully with my Reinhardt, where I found a window while shield break working with my Reinhardt to pull it into my team. If he's allowed to actually be in front and do this, that is going to feel bad. This is too much. Soldier 76. Oh, we are going after a lot of heroes that have issues, though. Like, this looks like we're doing buffs to heroes that have issues. I like it overall. I just don't like some of our specifics. Soldier 76. Heavy pulse rifle. Damage increased from 19 to 20. We've tried this before. He actually had this 20 damage at a previous point in the game, but the game was a lot lower damage back then. Healing reduced from 40 to 35 per second. I'm not sure I care, but okay. Developer comment, the damage per shot for heavy pulse rifle has been adjusted several times now, as it's an important tuning breakpoint for Soldier 76. It was last reduced when his weapon spread was replaced by recoil to help account for the increased accuracy potential, though with the recent reductions to his damage fall off at long range, it's reasonable to increase his damage output once again. Yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with increasing his damage, and I can accept decreasing his healing station as a result, because I imagine the thought there is, hey, it's going to be really hard for some flankers to shoo him off when he's posted on off angles and has heal station available with his damage increase too. So that's a reasonable trade. It's net going to make him better. Sure, I can go with that. Probably still net better. Yeah, I'm good with that. Why? That's just anti-fun. No. Like, is the idea here that you don't like people doing a tech where they're rolling to the edge of the spawn room with grapple claw and then swapping heroes real quick? Is that what you're doing? Like, I just don't care. Because if we're going to do that, are we going to do the same thing with Lucio? Are we going to do the same thing with Moira and Fade? Like, don't be anti-fun. Like, that does not provide enough upside in terms of, oh, we got rid of this thing that was super annoying to play against. That does not provide enough upside for the fun, for the comfort it takes away from the hero for the person playing it. That's a bad trade. Adaptive shield cast time reduced from 0.02 seconds to 0 seconds, so it can't be interrupted anymore. That's big. And that's probably a good change. You might need to reduce adaptive shield, which they did. Oh no, they increased it. Duration increased from 7 to 9 seconds. Okay, so I do like this change. Like, it was mostly luck when people interrupted adaptive shield, so this is good because it makes an ability more consistent that wasn't really skillfully being interrupted. Like, yes, there's some level of predicting when he's going to do it, but it was incredibly minor, and he couldn't really change his timing of it. He didn't really have the ability to go, well, I'll delay it to do stuff like this. So this is fine because it gets rid of something that had a variance that wasn't really skill based. So that's a good change in my mind. Duration increased from 7 to 9 seconds. I'm okay with that. Again, I don't always like what Blizzard does in terms of like, hey, we weakened Adaptive Shield by making it give less health per opponent, but now Adaptive Shield's too weak, so we're going to strengthen it by increasing its duration. I'd be more in favor of, well, maybe we should just do reversions of some previous stuff. But duration increase from 7 to 9, I do kind of like that because it's going to make people do a better job of figuring out what do you do when you have Adaptive Shield. And a lot of Hammonds don't figure this out. It's like, okay, you've used your pile drive, you've used your adaptive shield, your grappling claws on cooldown. Now what are you going to do? And the correct answer is shoot from an off angle and shoot somewhat aggressively from an off angle, or even in the opposing team while your adaptive shield is up. And I think this is going to do a better job of making people, well, you have to spend your adaptive shield. So I do conceptually like that. Proximity mines no longer stick to walls. Developer comment, Wrecking Ball is the fastest hero in the game, which works well for his disruptive playstyle. However, to help reduce his contribution to objective stalling, that's what you're going for? Again, Moira, Lucio, Mei, Reaper, are we going to work on them? Because they all do either get out of spawn faster or objective stall shenanigans that are equally annoying. His grappling claw ability will now start on cooldown upon respawning. It'll be up by the time they get to objective. Like it will be. It's not a long cooldown. Proximity mines will no longer attach to walls as it resulted in accidental bunched up placements out of range for most enemy targets more often than intentionally clever uses. Okay, fine. Yeah, I don't really care about the proximity mine change. Okay, so those are our changes. I like their picks for who they're targeting with heroes. I like that they went for Doomfist, who is weak, that they went for Genji, who is weak with buffs. I like that they went for Moira, who is weak with a buff, even though it's the wrong buff. I'm good with going with Roadhog for a buff here, that this is, I again, do not like this. Soldier 76, this whole thing doesn't bother me. I'm fine. I think this change is stupid. I think this change is good, and I'm fine with this change. I don't know that Wrecking Ball needed to be targeted, but I guess I don't know that he needed to be targeted with a buff the way that the rest of these heroes did, but I like their decision of who they went after, and I like their decision to buff those heroes. I have objections to some of these specific ones, which I've talked through. So before I do any sort of meta-analysis, what is this going to lead to, because I'm sure you guys are going to ask that, let's go back and catch up on chat here. But overall, this looks like a good, interesting patch to me. Okay, so let's catch up on chat. Again, I'm going to be starting from the top here, so you guys have time to get more comments in here. If you want to jump to the front of the line, you guys can do a super chat. But here we go. Semitic says hi. We've got a howdy from Sheldon and Mentos Frost as well. Alexander says, hello, do you have any tips for avoiding Meteor Strike Temporal? Yeah, your tips to avoiding Meteor Strike are generally door frames are useful to you. Door frames and corners can be useful to you because you end up in situations where if you're like on a door frame, like, let me not use blue here. If you're on a door frame like this and you're Zen, for example, if he goes, I'm going to come down here, you just go, well, I tuck here. If he goes, I'm going to come down here, well, you go, well, it's a short little rotate to tuck here, and there's time to do those things. So, like, door frames generally work well for you if you're, like, really worried about those. Those are sort of your best piece of architecture that you can use. You can try to use walls, of course, like corners like this, but those are going to be less good because he can do like, well, he came down here and which side is safe type stuff. So door frames are sort of your optimal thing. Corners are your next best. Other than that, okay, is there a teammate nearby that can help you? Are you in a place where, hey, if he comes down, he's immediately going to get slept, so he's going to get punished in return for going against you? Or you can get a bubble, or your Lucio is in range to be able to move you with speed to help you get out. Those are sort of the answers. Like, door frames are your friend, corners are okay, and what teammate aid exists. And I'm talking for those heroes that don't have tools to get out. Obviously, for heroes that have tools to get out, you don't need this. Remember, your Rein shield works. That's another good point. Like, if you have an Orisa or a Rein, for example, or even a Sigma, it will work. So if there's a Rein here, you just try to keep yourself stacked right on top of your Rein, and you go, okay, and then as soon as he's committed to a direction, then you just have to get to the correct side of Rein for Rein to deploy his shield, and it'll protect you. Okay. Feel like there's been a resurgency of Doom players in Diamond. Okay. It changes breakpoints with 225 heroes. Don't think Nanoblade Dash can wing combo them down anymore. Good. Okay, Nardstrom says, I don't think Doom changes will have any effect on whether he's meta or not, but when he is meta, it'll be less fun to play against. He's never going to be fun to play against, guys. Like, he's never going to be a fun hero to play against unless they completely redesign him. So I'm sort of mostly out with that and just in a, is he going to either be reasonably powerful? Is he going to be garbage? Or is he going to be good? And reasonably powerful is probably the best place, but Blizzard embraces flavor of the month balancing. And I'd look at that, and since they've embraced flavor of the month balancing, he's been out of meta long enough that it's probably time for him to have a little bit of time in meta. Not my favorite, but hey. Blah doing the math, 3 times 29 times 2 crit plus melee equals 204. Yep. So that is going to be scary to some heroes like Zen. It's going to make Genji better at the assassination playstyle, where he just sort of walks up on them and gets them. Blade changes make Rally a better counter against Blade. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. Again, you were going to have to take some power from his ult to buff his main thing. That was always going to be the case. 3 times 29 times 2 crit plus melee 204. No, we read that. 3 times 29 times 2 crit plus 50 dash 224. But right, doesn't quite take down the 225 heroes. Okay. Want to see heal through shields come back to Moira? That would be fine. People are rarely at full during team fights, though, so being 1 HP away from that breakpoint might rarely make a difference unless it's to buff Zen Tranquility. Yeah, that's true during team fights, but sometimes he wants to open things. He wants to be the one. Well, it depends which one you're talking about, Xander. If you're talking about the blade, that's true. If you're talking about the walk-up combo where you sneak up on someone and you just combo them with a triple headshot because you get right in the back of their neck and triple headshot them, and usually you would go triple headshot melee or triple headshot melee dash. But if you're doing that, people are frequently at full health when you do that to them. Blade changes also mean that Blade will be more out healable, sort of. Okay, so Matthew says, I think the Moira change is what she needs. She often has to place herself in positions where she can get shot in order to recharge heal meter. Survivability was a major issue for her. No. So, like, the problem with what you're saying, Matthew, is she has to position herself in places where she's getting shot. Well, not really. I mean, she does position, like, she likes to position herself in places where she can go, hey, maybe my Reinhardt is fighting here, maybe I'm here, maybe there's a piece of cover here, and maybe I'm sort of even controlling a second lane a little bit over here. Or, hey, my Reinhardt is here, there's a piece of cover here, I'm here, and I can heal my Reinhardt like this, or maybe I can even close the angle and still heal my Reinhardt, but I have to be out here if I want to do some damage to the opponent. I should have changed colors for this. If I want to do some damage to the opponent to regain resources, um, yeah, but there should be some risk to doing damage to the opponent. Like, from a design standpoint, there should be some risk when doing damage to the opponent. The only person who really gets around that is Mercy gets to do damage, not only. Mercy gets to around that by doing damage to opponents by boosting someone else while she's out of line of sight. Junkrat gets to get around that by going, hey, I'm going to throw nades around a corner, but they're incredibly inaccurate when you're doing that type of thing. It's sort of random spam, etc. Giving her the ability to not be at risk because she can out heal the incoming damage, that doesn't make sense. So, like, we expect someone to have to be exposed to a little bit of danger if they want to be doing damage. Like, that's how it works. So, like, and this isn't really that much danger. She can retuck and then still heal her Reinhardt if this is being done correctly. Like, her cover looks different than what a Zen or an Anna's cover looks like. She's going to play closer to the team fight, yes. And there are situations where she maybe won't have any cover available, and she's going to go, here's my Reinhardt, and I am just hard fire hose healing my Reinhardt while he's aggressively swinging. Enemies don't have time to seriously shoot at her while she's hard fire hose healing her Reinhardt because her Reinhardt is doing a stupid amount of aggression. And if that's not the case, either someone was allowed to get over here, and that's not really her job to solve, though she should be aware of it, or like the Reinhardt, she's pocketing the Reinhardt hard at the wrong time when the Reinhardt isn't actually threatening. So, like, I'm definitely not on the same page as you there, Alexander. Um, Or Matthew, excuse me. Not on the same page as you there, Matthew. Like, survivability was not a huge issue for her, and the other thing that I haven't covered here is Moira shouldn't be running out of heal meter that often. Like, Moira can run out of heal meter when she's fire hose healing someone, and that's fine. You should be winning the fight when you're fire hose healing someone, or you should be getting coalescence and be able to win the fight with that. She can do a lot of like between fight just puff healing or poke phase puff healing, and it cost her 0 resource. Like, Moira can stay at 100% resource or choose to stay at 80% resource or whatever in anything that isn't a hard brawl without much trouble. Most Moiras just are not good at using her resource. And we've seen that. We've even seen that in recent reviews. We've watched one of the Moiras that we regularly review on our channel go from spending resource really poorly to they could stay at 80%, 90%, 70% resource forever if they wanted to at no problem whatsoever. Until the actual brawl, and the brawl doesn't last that long. Nor should there be attention available to spend on Moira significantly during the brawl. Okay, Semitic says, at blah, Mealy should get eliminated and off to a clean combo for 250s. I don't know. Those words didn't quite make sense. 224 plus 30. Yes. Okay. If he didn't have deflect, I'd be okay with that. I mean, deflect's pretty garbage, so he basically doesn't have it. That's like indirectly giving him a barrier because shields don't give ult charge either. Yeah, that's sort of what it is for Roadhog. Why doesn't Blizzard do the Ice Frog method of balancing, which is buff strengths and nerf weaknesses? Because they don't have an Ice Frog. Most people in that community are convinced that Ice Frog has a very, very good understanding of the game and is holding a lot of things in his head. An understanding of the game is actually balancing all of those factors, and most balanced teams that are doing active rebalancing don't have an Ice Frog. Like, that community will tell you generally that, hey, Ice Frog is really good, and I think he's kind of the exception at this point. That said, Blizzard has also made a flavor of the month thing, and the reason that you choose to do a flavor of the month is flavor of the month balancing tends to get people to come back to your game. And Blizzard learned flavor of the month balancing early. Like, this is an old strategy, they still do it, but what flavor of the month balancing does is it causes people to see the news story, to hear the news, to hear the word of mouth that the hero that they like playing is good, so they come back to play their hero because Zen is good, because Hog is good, because Moira is good, whatever. They come back when their hero is strong, and that's good because if they come back when their hero is strong, hopefully they'll stay for some amount of time. And what happens is people tend to leave when their hero is weak more slowly than they come back when their hero is strong. So it's like, hey, if we make Genji good, for example, and we make Moira bad, this isn't what we did here. Bunch of people are going to hear that and they're going to come back to play Genji, and Moira players might start leaving, but they're going to get sick of it and start leaving slowly over time. Whereas the Genji players are mostly going to come back in a large spike. So, like, on the total, this actually works better for you from a retention standpoint. If you assume that we don't have to retain players in the format of keeping everyone playing all the time, we want most people playing most of the time, or the largest number of people we can have playing most of the time, this flavor of the month thing works better. That said, now for retention, you do faster release schedules, you do more content, you do more cosmetics, you do much faster updates of adding new heroes, etc., and Blizzard is way behind on that business model. Roadhog changes feel too late, like maybe there is something that would have made, maybe this is something that would have made more sense 2 years ago when tanks were still kind of tanky. I don't know about that. Like Temporal said above, they don't understand their own game. Yeah. Stall ball nerf. Okay, again, are we going to make it so that Reapers and Maze, are we going to nerf their contest better? Are we going to nerf it so that Moiras start with Fade on cooldown so they can't come out to stall faster? Like, what are we doing? Are we going to make it so Lucio, when he's on Speed Aura, doesn't contest the point? Obviously, that's a terrible idea. Like, that's kind of one of the things Ball brings to the table, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't really bother me. He can get back to the point payload, etc. 4 seconds faster. Okay. The grappling claw nerf is to avoid long 2 CP stalls. Balls can force, I would think. Yeah, I understand it. It just like I do understand it. I just don't care, Matthew. Like, sorry, this is like when I say, even if I said like I don't know, I don't get it, like I know you're responding, and you probably put that before I did all of my explanation. Like, I understand it, but again, there's other heroes that can do similar things. He does it the best, but the second best is probably Lucio, and we're not doing anything to Lucio here. And like, there's other heroes who do it well too, and it's going to be just annoying when you get eliminated and you're trying to rejoin a fight. Like, that is part of where Ball's power is, and you're taking some of it away and you are giving him some power elsewhere, but that's just going to feel bad for the Ball player, not so much in the stall situations, but in the like, can you get back to an ongoing team fight not on 2 CP second? That's going to feel bad. Yeah, that's fine. Roadhog can play like a flanking McCree, except he can commit harder to it because he's got 600 HP and can effectively have up to 900. I mean, he takes more than that. He can effectively have more than 900 with how the damage reduction works, but yes. Should Blizzard nerf the moral damage I do when I... yeah, okay, even higher if you account for damage reduction. Wrecking Ball change is stupid. Every other hero in the game starts with cooldown timers. Starts cooldown timers as soon as they get eliminated. Also, how does it interact with res? Right, that's a good question. How does it interact with res? And they played with that for a while. Like, does res need to stay on cooldown when Mercy is eliminated? And the answer is no. The answer we're currently on is like, no, she can have res when she respawns, etc. So let's let Hammond have grappling claw too. Okay. Or Brig, yes. If you say Anna, try to get behind your Brig and let her shield you from Meteor Strike. Yep. Personally, I don't like the grappling nerf, but I am very interested in the minefield changes and whether it's a nerf or a buff. And that's from Yazer. Fair enough. Fair enough. And Adam to Nicholas comes in here to say, wow, these changes definitely mean temporal sucks. Okay. Okay. Nordstorm doing more math. 110, 1.5 plus 1.3 equals 198. Single slash and no longer eliminates even with nano and damage boost. Is that right? 110. I don't think so. Okay. Stars Filth, who has his own coaching channel, says, "Do you have a preferred meta?" Yeah, I prefer dive metas. I like dive metas and dive poke metas. I've probably done the most professional coaching during brawl metas, so I'm perfectly fine with brawl metas, and I like poke metas too. But if I have like an actual favorite, it is dive metas. I think dive metas are the most fun, or dive poke combo metas, because I think dive poke combo metas have more depth to them than raw dive metas. And while poke metas can be interesting, I don't actually think they're that amazing to watch because it really comes down into, okay, which team has the better understanding of how to leapfrog their peaks, how to use their peaks, and it leads people to feel like, oh, who has the better widow, and it can be kind of slow in a way that I don't think is great for viewership. I think is even worse than Brawl for viewership in some ways. I think Dive is the best for viewership. I also like Dive the most, but from a play standpoint, Brawl is quite fun too. Poke is good, but I think Poke hybrid comps like Poke Dive is better than raw Poke comp metas. Temporal, which DPS do you main to get the most street cred? The most street cred? The most street cred. Well, naturally Bastion, right? Because when you take your Bastion into GM, that's an accomplishment. So that's the most street cred. Okay. Temporal, it is actually upon among Junkrat mains if you ever see the enemy the whole match. It is actually upon among Junkrat mains if you ever see the enemy the whole match. Sorry, I can't parse that sentence. Why does Temporal read messages where the Discord members talk to each other? Would you prefer we didn't do that? You guys can talk to each other. It's there to be a community that you can chat with each other, and that's totally fine. But I'm part of that community. It's my community. I can chat in there if I want to, Val. Uh, Adam Nicholas coming in with Temporal is fat. Okay, he's varying his insults now. Okay, I see how this goes. Nardstorm says, you know what else has big meta changes and does even more to bring people back than Flavor of the Month? New heroes. I know, Nardstorm, I know, but that's more work. Uh, and the new hero can't be DPS. We'll see. We'll see. The most interesting hero for people to play. Like, you say that, but if you're actually trying to bring people to play the game, DPS heroes are sort of the most interesting to people, the most attractive to people, the most people want to play them. So, no, I'm not sure that tracks at all. The grapple nerf is surely against stalling. I think we've covered that. Doom meta, please. Okay. I don't love Doom metas, but I don't mind them every once in a while. I just hope it doesn't last too long. Do you think Soldier is now on the level of McCree, or does he have a bit more to go before being able to compete? No, I don't think he's on the level of McCree. I don't think his design generally allows him to be on the level of McCree unless you dumpster McCree. I feel like these Genji changes aren't that great. McCree doesn't get two-shot by Blade anymore, and Reaper and Doom don't get slash dashed by Nanoblade. Yeah, of those, McCree is the only one that bothers me, to be honest. I'm totally fine with Doomfist and Reaper and May and all of those not getting comboed immediately by Blade. That doesn't bother me. McCree is the only one that does there. Semitic likes Brawl and Dive. Poke is just boring to watch and play to you. Fair enough. There's a lot that can be done in Poke, and I think we've had a really long Brawl meta in GOAT, so like more of the Overwatch audience, not a lot, all of, but more of an Overwatch audience has an understanding of how deep Brawl can go and how strategic and complicated it can get, and more of the aspects of what is going on. I don't think we've had a long enough lasting Poke meta yet for the audience to sort of be forced to learn that, if that makes sense. Because there is a lot going on there. If it's done well, it's not which Widow out aims the other Widow. Like, that's not actually what poke metas are about. But we haven't had a serious enough one to force the content creators to go there, to get the audience a chance to see it in a long enough term to do that. I think if we did, we'd have a similar result. That said, I don't recommend that Blizzard actually force that or make that occur, because I don't think the game can take it. Like, I think it's already taken viewerships, and some of those viewerships were due to an extremely long Brawl meta that isn't the most fun thing to watch. I think you can let the metas flow somewhat naturally. Be careful not to let boring ones last too long. But I, again, think Poke Dive is the most interesting to watch. Time to be a Brig one-trick pony for Doom buff? Okay. Actually frowned upon among Junkrat mains. I'm going back to your message. No, I'm not going to parse that. Okay, that's fine. It is, though, blah. New heroes are work and also balancing. After Brig got released, I refused to accept they can balance a new hero properly. Oh, Jumbo. Hey, Jumbo. To be honest, I wish they would just do something. Maybe just like rework Widow into a tank or MMR reset. Just something to switch it up. MMR resets are a disaster. They are. And you can look back. A game will try it every couple of years. One game will try it, and it is a disaster. People constantly cry for it, but that is one of those things that people would not like the results. Because remember, the MMR reset happens, and then people come back at different times. Everyone has an MMR right now, and the skill of the ladder generally moves. But if everyone's MMR gets reset, you're going to have people coming back now to participate in the MMR reset. You're going to have people coming back 3 months from now that'll have a fresh MMR. You're going to have people coming back 6 months from now, 9 months from now, 12 months from now, a year and a half from now. And all of these people that will constantly be coming back and sort of trickling into the game, like, oh, this MMR reset happened and put this Grandmaster player in your gold game. Put this bronze player in your gold game. Like, you don't want more of that. You already have that from new accounts, but you don't want to massively increase the amount of that. That is not particularly good. Dumpster McCree equals Buff Soldier 76. Well, yeah. It's our GM Zem main. Tell Tim Porley he's wrong. He's not, though. He's not. Am I the only one who enjoyed the coach meta? I really enjoyed it from a coach perspective. From a coach perspective and from a player perspective, it was fine. It was from a viewer perspective and a ladder perspective that it was not fine. Val complains that DPS players have so much choice but refuse to switch. Tank and support players complain there isn't enough choice, therefore we need more non-DPS new heroes. I rather they rework old DPS. I hear you, Val, but they have a bottom line that they're worried about. They're interested in the most eyeballs, the most engagement, the most players. I think people liked goats. It just went too long. That's fair. Except DPS players. And even pro DPS players didn't actually, some of them absolutely hated playing Briggs. A lot of them didn't, but they still wanted her nerfed and they wanted the comp gone because it was really hard to move up tiers during goats when you're stuck one-tricking Brig. Like, it's really hard when you're stuck one-tricking Brig or Zarya to get picked up from a tier 3 team to a tier 2 team, or from a tier 2 team to a tier 1 team, when the only thing that you're getting to play is a hero that everyone is convinced, oh, it's right over the next sand dune. We're going to nerf this any minute now, and then we're actually going to need to know what their Pharah and their Genji look like. But even if you go, like, play a gentleman's match where you show off your Pharah and your Genji, they don't care about your Pharah and your Genji because, like, well, that's not real. We need to see what it looks like in a real meta. So it was a really long time that pros, even if they were getting better, weren't able to move up. And, like, oh, spend 9 months in tier 3, spend 9 months in tier 2. Well, if you've already spent 6 months in tier 2, or you've already spent 3 months in this, or you've already spent 9 months here, just adding another 9 months is like, well, that's you can't do that because you can't support yourself in these tiers while playing. You can only support yourself in this tier as a player. Yeah. Okay. I think Blade now demands that you go for a support limb first, otherwise you're going to have zoning Blade. I doubt it. I think you're still going to be able to get non-support squishies. That said, you generally went for supports early. Do you think Genji would be viable if they just increased his shuriken damage to 29 but left Blade untouched? Probably, but I think it would take people a while to get the skills that are necessary back on him. Yeah. I don't think it would be a tomorrow he's the strongest hero, but it could be like a 2 months from now people realize how powerful he is type thing. Norvex, I think people in Overwatch liked it, but viewers thought it was slow and lame. Yeah. What was the meta called in the short period where Genji was strongly buffed and became a must pick? Was that a poke comp? I mean, it wasn't a serious thing. It didn't really exist. I don't know that it really, I mean, it was very short. I don't know that it really got a name. What do you think about Genji buffs? As a Genji man, I feel excited. I like it. I like the Genji buffs that we're looking at here. I think he needed buffs, and I think these are reasonable. I don't like what this does in terms of his breakpoint against McCree for Dragonblade specifically, but that's more an issue with McCree, I guess, than it is with Genji, because I don't mind generically having this breakpoint issue against 225 heroes for Blade. Poor people who fell into Brig jail. MMR reset, and then you end up at the same rank. Right, you end up at the same rank, but there's more broken games on the way there for years following. So you quit instead of winning? Okay. I don't want one, just be different. Yeah, well, okay. Didn't see the changes. This should be interesting. Yeah, I actually think this looks pretty good, Crunch. I overall like this. I again have serious issues with this buff, and I don't particularly like this buff either because of the portions of the ladder it targets and doesn't target. But overall, I like that they're buffing heroes that needed it. To be honest, I don't think Overwatch needs tons of updates. Chess hasn't changed many updates and is still a popular game. Yeah, so the problem is that's like, I'd be okay with that, but if that's the case, you get your balance really, really tight very quickly, which it would have been closest to on release. It needed a couple changes on release, and then you basically don't touch it. And you can do that, but that's not what a public expects anymore. The public now expects, hey, you're going to keep changing your game, you're going to keep updating your game, you're going to keep releasing new content. That unfortunately has become a public expectation, and you can not do it, and that's perfectly fine, but then you and your shareholders have to accept that your game is mostly going to wane. It's going to wane slowly, but it's mostly going to wane. You're going to have a slow decline by and large because you're competing against games that are constantly like, look at the new weapon we added, look at the new class that we added, look at the new skins that we added, look at the new map that we added, look at the new game mode that we added. And these things will constantly, ever so slowly, pull people out to go check them out. And some of them will bounce back because they love your game, but you're slowly going to have a decline. That said, you're going to spend less too because you're not going to be doing as much update work. And that can be an okay equation, but that's not such a good equation of, well, we have a slow decline going on in a world that is like a business world that's like quarterly profits, show us growth, show us growth, show us growth. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, especially if you're a company that sort of made their name on, maybe we'll release a new game every, 4, 5, whatever years. Well, you know, publicly traded company wants quarter over quarter growth. That's not going to be so well received, I'll just say. Okay. um Adam Nicholas, bad boy of temporal chat room. uh, it's kind of interesting that the most popular hero, Mercy, not totally sure about that, is not from the most popular role, DPS. I don't know if she's still the most popular hero. I know she could still be. I don't know. Probably. What happened to Blade? It got nerfed. Blade went from 120 to 110, which changes breakpoints, as we saw was calculated out here specifically on the 225 HP heroes. Why is Moira getting any changes without Orb rework? What do you want reworked about Orb, J-Bob? What do you want to do to Orb specifically? Okay. Think about all the times where one team gets stomped and everyone's just like, where is this? What is this matchmaking? Yeah, I mean, people are going to be people. I worry that this Genji buff would turn out to be like last year, and they'll need him bad again. They might. They might. There might be too much. There might be too much complaining on the Blizzard forums from support players specifically, because support players really don't like it when divers get powerful. And low level players really get more annoyed by Genji than they do Tracer because of the style that low level players to learn to aim in first. Lower level players who are not yet comfortable with mouse control tend to get more comfortable with left and right aiming faster than they get comfortable at sort of these diagonal up aiming, or this hit a 180 and diagonal up aim, which is useful for hitting Genjis. It's not actually useful. Genji's evasive movement isn't terribly useful against higher level players with good mouse control, whereas Tracer's is, because Tracer has much less predictable in terms of which direction his Tracer is going to go, and it can be bigger movements, but Genji's movement is particularly annoying for lower level players. And so Genji tends to annoy them because they, even if they lose to Tracer, they sort of, it doesn't feel bad to try to aim at Tracer. It feels bad for players with poor aim to try to aim at Genji, um, which causes complaints, and unfortunately complaints can lead to nerfs, even if the character isn't actually too powerful. Gotta be Valve to be able to do the crazy plays? Well, maybe. Some other companies could do it. I would love it if I could pay for the game once, own it, not receive any changes, and then buy the sequel when that comes, and then buy the sequel when that comes out. Got it. Yeah, no, that was, I remember when video games were like that. I kind of appreciated when video games were like that, but you actually bought games back then. You didn't license the right to maybe play it sometimes, but it'll change, etc. Laws and the contracts for games have changed a lot since those days. But those were some good days, Nardstorm. Um, Remove orb. Remove orb and Moira smile. How is removing orb gonna make Moira happy? I'm gonna need you to sell me on that one, J Bob. I think Mercy is the most popular in terms of characters known from Overwatch, but like as of people's favorite to play, I think Ana's still dominating the support roster. Could be. Shareholders have a incentive to encourage companies to make short-term gains, then jump ship when they tell the next company to do the same. Yeah. I mean, all hail quarterly profits, right? Support players whining against Dive killed the game for a few years. I mean, that is what got us a release schedule of let's see Moira and Brig. Like, that happened. And yes, that was very clearly a result of Dive is too powerful and some people don't like it. So let's give, rather than accept that Dive can either be a base race where you're trading backlines, or Dive can be a, well, let's protect our backline and that is the skill. It turned into a, well, we don't want to do teamwork and we don't want to either accept that it's okay, it's which side can hold out longer. If neither of those are on the table, then it becomes a, well, we don't like either of those options, so let's let supports incredibly well defend themselves against Dive to the point at which it just doesn't work. And if you can do that just by adjusting one or two heroes in your backline, you can shut down a whole comp, a whole meta. That's not good game design, especially when it was balanced before. And it's not like it's like, oh, well, now everyone has equal amounts of fun. We've just shifted where the pain is in the game from supports to tanks. That's what we ultimately have done. It just took a while to get there. Where now tanks are the ones who get abused. And we might say tanks are the most impactful, and tanks are incredibly impactful, but it's because they get punished so hard if they make mistakes compared to some of the others. But it's fine. It is what it is. Tanks took it on the chin a little bit better. And I'm not calling out any specific individual here. I'm calling out mostly the Overwatch forums. Okay. I agree, Semitic. I see more Ana than Mercy in my games. Okay. I don't mind getting dumpstered by Dive. I just blame myself for not being better. Yep, but those are different mindsets. Some people have that mindset. Go, what could I have changed? What could I have done better? How could I have held out for longer? How could I have made it so that they couldn't do it? How could I have preemptively prevented this? Other people go, I don't like it. I mean, yeah. Genji can be countered so easily. That's true. Yeah, wasn't that crazy? You bought a thing and you owned it. What a crazy concept. Whoa now. You can't do that with anything anymore. I mean, you used to be able to do that with video games. You used to be able to do that with things like Photoshop, with Office, with your, operating system, all that stuff. Nope, not anymore. Why protect the backline if you make the backline protect itself? And making the backline protect itself was a viable strategy. You just had to pull the trigger on your dive fast enough that you were, you were trying to trade backlines, and whichever backline held out longer would tend to win. It's like, are you better at surviving? Are we better at attacking than the other team's combination of survive and attack? Even in the low ranks, Genji shouldn't be hard to counter. He's not, but hey. But, if you get low enough, the aim does become a problem. Because the counters that you would use to Genji when you get weak enough with aim are heroes like Winston, and Winston really does not belong in his own backline. Like, that Genji will do a better job playing as a poke hero than Winston will do playing in his backline if you force that trade. And there's no like auto lock sim anymore to stay on the Genji. McCree actually has to be able to aim. You could stick Sombra in your backline to deal with the Genji, but he can then go into a poke phase. Like, Genji has some flexibility to him. It's okay if supports have anti-dive measures, but they need to be thought of in terms of skill, like Sleep Dart, rather than just press button and I win. I'm not even sure that's totally true. Like, I don't care if they're hard to execute because they're going to get executed properly once you get to a high enough rank. And if just picking Ana, she can't shut dive down by herself with Sleep Dart, but if like just picking Ana, shut down dive, but all of her abilities were hard to use, but if you could, she shut down dive by herself, that would be a problem. Like, I don't care if you'd made original Briggs Shield Bash have to be aimed better than it was, and made her repair pack have to be aimed better than it was. Like, that wouldn't have done anything, because that still would have been done by 4,400 players, and it's still bad. It might have been less bad for the rest of the ladder, but it's still bad because one hero shouldn't have that much ability to shut down an entire composition. Speaking of buying and owning, is this the day Temporal says to buy GME? Is it? Is it? I have some great ideas for Overwatch. How do I make sure my voice is heard? Thanks. Oh, Stan the Man asks how to make sure your voice is heard. Yeah, good luck with that. Proper marketing. I mean, proper marketing is the answer. You get your idea. You need an idea that is actually going to be popular, or you need to frame it in a way that's going to be popular. You need to get it out there some way on social media, and you need the social media push. The only way you get anything done these days is either you have some level of ownership, you know the specific right people, or you do a big enough social media push that it's hard to ignore. But even that's a little dicey, because companies get protective, especially in the video game industry, of like, no. The old line of no. Don't tell us how to fix the game. Just tell us what you don't like, and we'll figure out the right way to fix the game, which is a little arrogant, I'll say. Like, definitely a little in the arrogant territory to say that one. But we've heard that from Blizzard before. We've heard from them that they don't want to be told how to fix the game. They don't want to be given the proper solution for the game. They want players to tell them what feels bad, and they'll figure out the right thing. They're the professional developers. So it's a little dicey, because even though a social media push is sort of your best bet, come up with an idea, frame it well, and then, get it talked about by creators like me, promote it on Reddit, send it around Twitter, let it do the rounds, maybe even to the point where people don't even know it was your idea. It's still not perfect, because there's a little bit of a, this is our territory, well, maybe we'll do something like that, but we won't do that type thing. And the reason we'll do something like that is we don't want to do exactly what you said, and that's a little dicey. The other person's trick is, again, just know the right people. So, know the head of the dev team, or know the head of the balance team, be personal friends with him, and be like, hey, what about this? And keep selling and pitching, lobby your idea effectively. Lobbyists work. Okay. Is there going to be meta prediction on this stream? I'll think about it, probably. There is nobody to attack by backline if I destroy the enemy backline. The mind of a Reddit Lucio. That's true. That's true. YS says dive was a trash meta. Every meta was a trash meta. No single strategy should dominate. You're dreaming. Overwatch in terms of meta is the best in the best state it's been now since Overwatch is in a very good place right now. Like, we've had a very diverse meta, and that is good, but I can promise you that if it keeps going, it will simplify. Like, if it keeps going, the meta will simplify. This one held on an unusually long time and has bounced around a little bit on what people think is better or worse, etc. But it will simplify. And you say dive was a trash meta, but dive was fairly diverse. Like, when we refer to dive, dive might have had a bit of fixed slots, in that this is our Winston, this is our D.Va, maybe this is our Tracer in a fixed slot, but we had Zen, sometimes we had Ana, sometimes we had Sombra, sometimes we had Lucio, mostly we had Lucio. Then sometimes we had Soldier, sometimes we had Widow, sometimes we had Genji, sometimes we had Sombra. Like, that happened while the dive meta existed. A triple tank meta existed that was playable into it. Like, ninjas in pajamas were big on that. Like, there was diversity to the dive meta. The more recent dive meta with the Mercy had, of course, the Mercy instead of the Lucio, and that allowed a ton of stuff where you'd see Junkrat over here as well. Like, there's been diversity in dive metas. And at the beginning of GOATS, you had diversity too, because you had metas that tried hard to fight it. They just didn't hold on as long as some of the competition to whatever the correct meta is right now has held on. But yeah, the game's not going to be balanced tightly enough for long periods of time for people to not eventually solve a meta, even if they're wrong in their solution. Supports like to have the big rectangle in front of them. Dive makes the rectangles useless. Supports then have to think about positioning, CDs, etc. The big rectangle was never that helpful. The big rectangle is for Reinhardt to rotate. If his team happens to catch the rotate bus, so be it. But hey, you don't long-term stand behind your Reinhardt like that. Or your Rein shield like that. DPS players complain about on Rein way more than supports. About no Rein way more than supports. Sometimes. I don't think that's true, YS. I think what's happening there is you have a bit of a selection bias because you play support and you specifically play to support a fair amount of Mercy that doesn't really care about the Rein shield because she's playing out of the lane in the first place. Like, you're going to hear more DPS complaints in your games, YS, because you're occupying one of the two support slots and you're not complaining. Adam says, I think the biggest frustration was the fact that high skill ceiling players were counted by low skill ceiling plays. Yeah, I think that was a frustration. I don't think support should be able to shut down dive like Brig did, but have some defense against it, like Sleep. Sure, no problem. Stan says, thanks, bro. No problem, Stan. What do I think about Samito's suggestion to change immortality field to damage reduction? I think they've experimented with it, and the answer so far is no. Maybe for Overwatch 2, but I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to treat Scott Mercer to a steak dinner. Okay. Nardstorm, Blizzard likes their own solutions. Player, McCree too strong after 225 HP nerf. Blizzard, we're nerfing Kree's reload and roll. Yeah, about right. The only meta that was diverse was Moth because Mercy enabled so many people. I mean, this meta has been pretty diverse. Nard, we were wrong as players. They fixed him. Okay. They fixed him by nerfing something completely different. It had nothing to do with that adjustment. It had more to do with the hit scan fall-off change. But sure. And before COVID, was L making tons of money? What about after COVID? I don't care for L, but I want them to make money because it's good for the game itself. So no, they made too many mistakes. So what happened with Owl, if you sort of look at the timeline, and I could see this, and that's when I left Overwatch for a while because it didn't make sense to progress forward into Owl as a coach. But what we're looking at is season 1, better than expected. All engines go. This looks very good. We're fine. End of season 1, little bit of a dicey thing in that we suddenly dropped before the playoffs a wild patch. So like the team that won it all clearly was, it's like we dropped a wild patch before the playoffs. Are the top teams really the teams that were the best? No, they're the teams that lucked out and got a meta that was good for them for the final thing. And that was sort of like, this is a much bigger change than you'd get in other sporting events. And like, we're going to play basically the entire season on this. And then the playoffs are on a different patch. So that wasn't terribly liked, but it did fine. Season 1, overall a success. The numbers were better than they expected. The growth was good. Everyone was pretty happy. Season 2, GOATS happened. And it happened for way too long. Like, there's no way around that. We were GOATS before we went into season 2. They thought that was fine. They didn't hit GOATS with the nerf hammer terribly hard. They let GOATS continue. They worked around the edges of GOATS, and I think they probably thought that were going to have nerfed GOATS out of existence with some of their patches, but they weren't willing to definitively do it until way too late. So season 2 dragged on. Viewership was not good. Viewership was not good for this critical season 2 after a successful season 1, and the numbers, they did not get the growth that they were looking for remotely, and they were pretty open about that. They also were doing things like trying to funnel all of the sponsorship money. Like Contenders had a terrible list of things that they couldn't get sponsors from because they were trying to, like, some stuff would be like, hey, they don't want gambling, things like that, and that's fine if they want to do that for moral reasons, whatever. But there was a lot of stuff like energy drinks, computer stuff that Contenders couldn't get sponsorships for because they wanted to force those sponsors to instead go up to Owl, which wasn't good for that scene. So you start getting some pros who aren't, the tier 1 pros complaining, etc. Then we were supposed to save this with season 3. And in season 2, I think maybe it was season 3, we started to get sort of what I'll call a little bit of a sellout, which was well, we're not doing home games yet because home games are supposed to be season 3, but season 2 is going poorly, so teams aren't really wanting to invest in setting up serious stadiums to seat like 8,000 people, to seat like 20,000 people for home games, etc., and have all the teams go around like originally pitched. They instead went, well, let's start doing like, maybe we'll sort of do like a couple home games, not for every team, but we'll do home games for a couple teams sort of as a sample thing, etc. And it's like, whoa, this is walking away from what it was supposed to be. In season 1, everyone's belief of what season 3 was supposed to look like was season 3 is going to be all home games, you all travel, etc. That all happens. That's not what happened. Then we move into COVID territory, which delays home games even further. So like we had a bad meta last too long, which was bad for viewership, was bad for money, caused them to not be able to get the renewal deal that they might have liked from Twitch, instead go YouTube. They made a bad merch deal. Um, again, didn't get the homesteads that we were looking for. Again, lower viewership means less interest in paying to keep together beloved teams because they're expensive. And therefore, we see more of okay, this is going to take a hit. The homesteads, again, not paid for the same way, so we get less of them. They're not what people originally were promised. It doesn't look like Major League Baseball or NFL anymore. It looks like we go over and every once in a while there's a thing that's sort of like, let's get a couple home games out of the way for a couple different teams here. This is weird. Not like, oh, hey, there's Overwatch games in San Francisco on Friday and this weekend, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's instead like, okay, there's this weekend, and then maybe we'll see them here again in 6 months or in 4 months, or like that's not what people were sold effectively as viewers or as investors. But the investors, I think, partially were we don't want to build these stadiums, we don't want to rent these stadiums, etc. as a result. And then we have COVID and then bad things. So like it had some bad luck, but there was a big self-inflicted wound here in season 2, to be perfectly honest. And a lot of that comes from here. And some of this was viewership, but some of this was also interaction from the players, not from the players, but from the player base, not the pro player base, but the regular player base leaving the game as other games got more popular because they're bleeding users. And if you're not even playing the game, it's going to be hard to get you watching the game. And you really want, if people to leave the game, you want people to sort of leave the game with good memories, not leave the game with, oh, goats, that was terrible. Because if they leave with good memories, they still might want to go there and watch games and buy alcohol and overpriced food and merchandise, etc., because it's their local team, if they have good memories of playing the game. Which is part of why Overwatch 2 is sort of the last good chance for them, because you can sell a lot of people on good memories. You can bring people in to play the PvE and do the PvE, and then maybe they keep playing the PvE, or maybe they leave, or maybe they come back and try the PvP again, and the PvP is really tightly balanced and really good, so they enjoy it. But even if they don't do this, if you can let them leave the game with good memories surrounding Overwatch, you have a better chance of turning them into viewing fans for a few years thereafter, as opposed to, ugh, we left with goats, or ugh, we left because balance patches never happened. Okay. Hmm. So no, Al was not making tons of money before COVID, though they were doing quite well in season 1. Like it wasn't like, oh my god, this is just a phenomenal success, but the money was there. The Twitch deal was very good that they got. The Twitch deal was very good that they got. They were making some money from selling tickets just fine. They were doing for like the first, for most of that season, they were maxing out that stadium. And that was like a few hundred person stadium, but that was still good. You're selling some stuff there. They were doing okay on merch in the first season. They went to a worse merch provider in a later season, and it quickly got out how much worse of a merch provider it was. And that hurt too. Do you think Overwatch should try to push back to open queue? I don't think that'll happen. Oh god, no. Does anyone miss the days of 5 selfish and still act DPS? Should the rectangle was always for Rhine, but metal rank supports love to have their we need a shield. Okay. I think what made Overwatch great was that most matchups had a fair chance to win their engagements, and the difference was skill. Still true. I mean, I will tell you, I do tell you guys, like you guys see me coach teams here. You guys see me coach teams, not always top of the line teams, but teams here, and I'll tell them how to play their comp correctly, how to play their comp to play into their comp strengths, and it can absolutely win. Now, it's only as you get to the top where it's like, okay, well, let's look for that 2% advantage that it starts really mattering. That's not how the game was designed. Jeff even said the game was designed with counter switching in mind. Okay, what was not how the game was designed? Like, again, that sort of gets into a do the devs really know their game thing, because like counter switching might be the belief of what's going to happen, but we quickly built team strategy in the game. The game very clearly was designed with team play in mind. Like originally, this game was supposed to be released with a team queue only, no solo queue. This was meant to be a team game, and the ability design and the stuff like how tanks work together and how supports work together. The synergies in this game make this very clear that this was a team game, and counter swapping isn't going to overcome those synergies. And again, how ults work, and especially how ults worked on release, do not complement a we should swap heroes mentality. Like you can make some swaps, but that's again them not designing how that's them not understanding what's actually rewarded and not rewarded in their game from a design standpoint. It was supposed to be a game of chess in terms of swapping, maybe according to some of the devs, but that's not the game they designed. I think it's obvious the devs don't understand their own creation, or at least why people liked it. Right. No, it wasn't designed with skill in mind, like you're saying. It was supposed to be about switching to counter, then switching to counter. No. Like those aren't mutually exclusive statements. Like something can have skill in mind. You can have like counters that are soft counters where it's like, oh, this is Genji and someone swaps to Winston to counter him, but this is a better Genji than a Winston, so the Genji still wins. And I just use that as an example. We could do the same thing with Winston and Reaper. I don't care. Like, you can have a game of counter swaps where, like, okay, Winston, the Genji swaps to Reaper, whatever, fine, aha, and that's a good thing. But the Winston then doesn't have to swap because he can still outplay the Reaper. So he's not dominating Genji as hard as he was dominating the Reaper, but he can still find value. Like, you can have a game that they sort of expected people to do swaps in, and that's fine. You can have that game without having it be both sides are expected to swap all the time. No, you can have both of those things be true. You can have both of those things. Except they do, because Jeff acknowledged people ended up playing the game not the way intended by the ones tricking by the one tricks maining. Well, hold on. Those are different. Again, those are different things. You're conflating things. Like, that doesn't say what you think it does. That doesn't lead, like, your logic train is broken because, like, A does not necessarily lead to B with some of the things that you're saying. They can have not expected people to one trick as hard or to main as hard as they did without expecting that like this Winston is always going to swap or this Genji is always going to swap. They can think, hey, people aren't going to one trick. People are going to play what makes sense for the good of the team without expecting that people are going to swap heroes 6 times a match. Because you can go, hey, I'd usually play Winston, but my team's really going to benefit more from Reinhardt this time, so I'm going to play Reinhardt this time without, oh, they got on Reaper, so let me get off of Winston and get on, I mean, there's not a good tank answer to Reaper, but let me get on Zarya or let me get on D.Va type thing. Like, you can have both of those things. So what you're saying is not this means this, the way that I think you think it is, YS. Okay, and Adam says, and they continued to expand on that philosophy in the game bled players and viewership because GOATS was disastrous. I don't know anyone who disagrees about release Brig being a disaster. I hear you, YS, but some people did really like her. There were some. When the game was first released, the hard counters weren't really as hard counterish as Brig was. Exactly. The game was still a fair amount of counterplay against your counters. Yep. NFL, but Overwatch League would be awesome. It would have been awesome. I'm afraid that Activision has poisoned that well. I'm afraid that well is now poisoned. But enough things came out and are trying to do the same thing in Call of Duty leagues and other things, that maybe it isn't, because maybe they'll be more successful. Or I still hope Overwatch League will be successful. That'd be good, right? Okay. Like the McCree Tracer dynamic, exactly. uh, Brig was a disaster. No one reasonable disagrees with Brig being a disaster now, but at the time, lots of people thought, no, she's good. Genjis just don't like that they can't just one-shot supports anymore, would have been the complaints at the time. Or no, you guys just don't understand her. You have to poke her out first. You have to break her shield first, when she had a stupid high HP shield and health and healed herself, etc. Like, that was common. You heard that a lot at the time in, forums and such, of like, no, you just need to break her shield first. Like, come on. Buffing Moira still makes her the worst support. Yeah, I agree. She needs a rework, not a buff. Maybe not a significant rework. Maybe change what Orb does, change how Orb works. But yeah, this buff doesn't do much for her. It's 5 more health per second if she's right-clicking the whole second. Yep, that's true. That's true. But again, it's going to buff that's going to be more annoying for DPS playing against her at low levels than at high levels, significantly so. And she's already better at low levels than she is at high levels. Brig is a disaster because she is an example of swap where you cannot get value with no argument of I'm skilled enough to still play around my counter. It's either you swap or you gain close to 0 value. Originally, now she's still got a little bit of she's very situationally useful and situationally useless, but yeah, originally that was a big problem. They still never fixed goats. They just forced 2-2-2. I know. 2-2-2 should have been in the game since release. It's an option. You hated 5 Instalock DPS way more than goats. Okay. 4 more health over the second. Yeah, it's 4 technically. Okay. But again, I'm complaining about it direction-wise, blah. Like, you're right. The actual value here isn't significant enough, though. I mean, it's 25%. It increased the value by almost 25% there. But yes, it's not hugely significant, but it does matter. Like, it matters, again, it's the point of the ladders that it's hitting that I'm objecting to more than the actual value. If it had been from 20 to 22, I'd have had the same complaint. To be honest, Moira buff gives me more time to pester opponent, Ana, and Mercy. Okay. Making counter swapping the focus is kind of lame. If people are just countering the counter who's countering, then it's just a loop. Yeah, sort of. What do you mean? How ults worked on release? Were they different on release? They've played with ult charge multiple times. There have been global ult charge nerfs a couple times, but yeah. I just want to play Tracer only. Okay, well, you could mostly get away with that until Brig, and you can mostly get away with that again now. Can we have a built-in SR system on Discord so we can make a bunch of 6 stacks? I would love the idea of getting reviewed with other Discorded people. Maybe. I'm a little hesitant to do that because I don't really want the Discord to turn into a place of... I'm a little concerned that puts too much emphasis on what people's SR is in discussion. I'm a little concerned about that. But maybe the pros outweigh the cons of making it easier for you guys to group up. I'll think on that some more. I just got here. Can you explain the Doom stuff? I don't really understand it. Sure. So the Doom stuff, he basically, when he uses Meteor Strike, his Q, Doom usually engages by using 2 abilities and uses his 3rd ability to get out. When he has Meteor Strike up, he can engage using all 3 abilities, or he can try to get eliminations using all 3 abilities, and then use his Meteor Strike, wait the entire time of his Meteor Strike, and then use his abilities again, or at least one of his abilities again. That makes the Meteor Strike very non-threatening because he actually wants to stay in the sky and let his abilities recharge. Now his abilities will recharge twice as fast, which makes the Meteor Strike itself a little more threatening and or lets him use more of his abilities on the other side. So he gets to sort of do 2 full cycles instead of 1 cycle plus an ability when he has his ult. Your ult percent should be preserved if you swap off. No, your ult charge number should be preserved, not your ult percent. Um, Your ult percent should be preserved if you swap off available at the same percent if your teammate swap off that hero. I don't know if you're saying like if you go, hey, if my teammate was on Moira and she had 50% ult and now they swap off to something else and you swap to Moira, so you should have that same 50%, or if you're saying, hey, you were on Mercy with 50% and now you swap to Moira and you should have 50%. That's definitely not true. What you could make an argument for is everyone's ult actually has a certain amount of damage healing value effectively that it takes to get it. Like it takes 6,000 points to get this hero's ult versus it takes 3,000 points to get this hero's ult. So 50% of these are two different things. But you could have it where, hey, you were at 50%, so you were actually at 3,000 ult points, and if you swap to this hero, you have your ult. You, in theory, could do that, but even that isn't perfect. That would be way better than preserving percents. Okay, jumping to our super chat, we have a... Oh, I missed that. My bad, Adam. We have a 199 super chat coming in from Adam saying Tim Sorrell sucks, but he has 30 viewers. Awesome! We're up to 32 viewers. Good stuff, guys. Good stuff. And thank you for the super chat, Adam. And then from Sheldon Krieger for $5. That $5 super chat from Sheldon Krieger says, thanks for the coaching. 1-3 in a row today. Feeling good? Excellent! Very nice, Sheldon. Very nice. Thank you both so much for the super chat. Sheldon Krieger for $5 and Adam Nicholas for $1.99 there. Thank you, guys. Okay. After watching CYX, Roadhog sure looks like a tank counter to Reaper. Okay. Boycott Blizzard. I mean, we could. I think what we'll find is long term most people won't. So like it's correct to say boycott Blizzard this week. I don't have an issue with anyone boycotting Blizzard. If it makes you feel better, I'm not playing the game right now. I'm reading patch notes, but yeah, it's the sort of thing where we've seen this before. This boy, you know what? I'm not going to get further into it. It doesn't matter. That's fine. Doomfist does not need a buff. They just need to remove him from the game. Probably not going to happen. They could have reworked him into a tank, but I think that ship has sailed. Doomfist should be reworked into an off tank like Bastion and Mei. Could be. Looks like they won't, though. I mean, based on what we saw for the Overwatch 2 preview, Mei was still very much a damage hero, not a tank. They were moving her away from her tanky. They were moving her away from her control, in fact, by taking away her freeze beam. Wait, what do I think of Brig right now? I think Brig right now is fine. Brig right now is fine. She's a specialized hero and that she really doesn't work very well if she doesn't have either dive heroes on her team to enable or dive heroes on the opposing team to disable. She sort of needs one of those things. But other than that, I think she's fine. She's a specialist, but I think from a power standpoint, she's okay. She might be a little high on power, but I'm okay with her being a little high on power when her role is specialized like that. If they got rid of Junkrat and Doom, it would increase the fun and playability of Overwatch by 500%. I mean, you say that until Sombra and Mei take over and as the ones to take away your fun. And then it would be complaints about, I remember when the complaints were about D.Va is not letting DPS players have any fun. Mercy is rezzing people, and that's not fun. There will be new things to step into the gap. According to the forums today, Mercy damage boost is as broken as release Brig. Huh. Funny how it took so long to realize Mercy damage boost was good. It is good, but it's not that broken. It's a good thing we don't give the forums too much credit. The problem is Pharmacy. I think they should nerf her by making Mercy easier to hit while flying. I don't know that Mercy needs a survivability nerf. I don't think Mercy needs a survivability nerf at all, so I'm not for that. Increase her hitbox size in the air. I mean, the only way you're reasonably going to do that is you're going to make her wings spread and be bigger when she's using her float tech, her slow fall tech, and that's the only way you could accomplish that. It wouldn't hugely bother me if they did that, but I don't think they need to. Increase her hitbox size in the air. Junk Doom aren't too bad. A good Widow is way more oppressive. Depends, but yeah. The truth is, the forums hate everything that doesn't require aim and everything that rewards aim too much, and they can't actually see past their bias, so they hate everything. Okay. As an anime, and I disagree. Why are you worried about pharmacy as an anime? You can put plenty of pressure on pharmacy as an anime. Like, you're not going to take her down by yourself, but you're going to put a little preemptive pressure on her at the beginning of the fight before your team has spent out a bunch of their health to cause her to play a little more passive, which lets your team try and win. Yeah, I agree. I just think they should make Moira damage less at range and more up close. I could see that. That could be an interesting one, Bluff. Further encourage her brawly playstyle, or further encourage her to be played with Brawl. I agree. The reason they can't really buff Mercy Fair is that it buffs that combo. Okay, okay. And her damage should be a percent, but her resource replenish should be consistent. I can see that. So if you're far away, you can get the same amount of resource, but you're not doing much damage. If you're closer, you do much damage, but you still get the same amount of resource. Okay, okay. It doesn't feel fun. It doesn't feel fair or fun to die to a junk or doom ever. That's why losing to a good one releases more stress hormones that cause tilt. They ruin the fun. It's really preventable. Yeah, I agree on Doomfist. Like, it's just stressful, and the solution to Doomfist isn't obvious to most people. But if you get eliminated by a Junkrat, like, he has very obvious weaknesses. If you can make him fight in the open where his grenades can't ricochet very well, you don't push into space that he clearly controls, which is supposed to be his strength. Like, he is a very punishable hero, and he is a hero that is kind of weak if you can force him to take fights in the open. And he doesn't have good precise poke. Like, I don't know. Like, it might be stressful to get eliminated by Junkrat, but that's a pretty solvable stress, and it's pretty clear, I think, to most players how to solve that. I think it's more frustrating to die by a lot to Doomfist because people don't realize how to solve him. They feel like he just appears on them and eliminates them, and he does it repeatedly. Whereas Junkrat doesn't really repeatedly do that to you. He can walk into you and hit you with a nade and then a mine, but he was very punishable on the way in doing that. Doomfist feels less obvious. The truth is, you do have to know Doomfist rollouts, which sucks. You don't have to do quite that level of homework for other heroes, but also you have to understand that Doomfist is much less likely to commit to people if he's missing health. So you've got to chip him early, and chipping him early is something that supports sort of figure out for other flankers, but don't really figure out for Doomfist because Doomfist's flank patterns and locations and how quickly he can cover a lot of distance are different. So I do understand why Doomfist is frustrating. Plus, Doomfist has a one-shot ability too in his punch, which is also frustrating. So, like, I get that with Doomfist. I'm probably not there with you on Junkrat. Toxicity towards everyone. Temporal doesn't want to make his own bronze bandits. I don't think there's a need to make them. I think when it comes to, like, we can send a team against the bronze bandits as sort of like their graduation battle, but I don't think we need to do our own Here Are the Adventures reality TV of, like, our team climbing, etc. We have groups that we've worked with, or we can put a group together, scrim for a week, and then go, okay, we're good. Like, I think that makes more sense, and it'll lead to a better match effectively for them than leveling up when they would level up at different paces. Like, we can make a team that's a good match for them towards basically now that we're approaching the end of that bronze bandits thing that's being done over there, as opposed to, okay, well, where do they go, and then the match is just before it even starts, people know which way it's going to go. It doesn't bother me to lose to a hit scan because it doesn't feel unfair. Right, I get that, deleted C, but I can almost guarantee you it's because you understand the hit scan matchup better than you understand the Doomfist matchup. Like, Doomfist is frustrating, I get it, but if you actually understand how Doomfist works, like, you understand how to make him not work, it's not going to feel as frustrating. Like, it's when people get frustrated until people feel when they get betrayed, or when they feel like when their expectations are betrayed. And your expectations in a shooter are that when you have cover, you're not going to take damage. And Hitscan do a pretty good job of following those expectations. Junkrat does not follow that expectation. Doomfist does not follow that expectation. But you have to understand how those heroes work, and then once you understand how they work, you won't have the expectation that cover is valid against them. Like, you have a bias, an internal expectation that, like, when I'm behind cover, I'm safe, and that's being betrayed, so you get frustrated. Once you understand that's not the case, it's not going to bother you as much. I'm not saying you'll never hate a Doomfist, you'll never hate a Widowmaker, you'll never hate a Junkrat that walks into you and double minds you. Like, I'm not saying that those are the case, but like, you're going to get way less frustrated once you actually understand, okay, Junkrat is not a problem if he's out in the open, and it's kind of my fault if I go into a place and push him in an enclosed area. And Doomfist is going to try to come from above, and he can cover a lot of distance when he comes in from above, but he's really not very good if I can get above him, and he's also very unlikely to come in if he takes meaningful chip damage, even if it's just like 20-30% of his health, before he's able to start his rollout to come in. If you understand those things, well, what can you do about it? Well, if you're Lucio, you can ride higher up than he is and pressure him from above. If you're Ana, you can try to get on the high ground. If you're Zen, you can go, okay, well, where do his rollouts actually take him to? Well, he can't get me if I position on this left side instead of this right side. Like, get those. I totally get why you're frustrated, but he is beatable. It doesn't bother me to lose to a hit scan because it doesn't feel it's unfair. Right, we covered that. Val wants an improved Discord group up system because we have a shared common knowledge. Yep, that makes sense. Temporal should consider starting to organize the students on teams. That would be a very good move marketing-wise. You could do tryouts like just one team per rank. Ooh, maybe. I don't know about that one. So the Doomfist stuff is just he gets like 2 cycles of abilities in the same dive, just quickly separated by Meteor Strike. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's a reasonable enough description of it. I said many things on Discord with a 1.5 KSR next to my name. No one judged my SR, only what my logic was. And I would like to keep the community like that. Like, I think we have a community that is pretty, hey, we care about the thoughts, the conclusions, the reasoning, how you got there, etc. I kind of like that. But like, again, you can have a situation where someone can do that without it necessarily affecting everyone. But if everyone does it, potentially it doesn't. But I'll think on it more, Val. I will. Uh, it's already BS. He gets his health 100% back from Meteor. I hear you. Uh-huh. I think if you swap, don't leave spawn and swap back. You changed your mind. You should retain ult charge on your original character, but ult charge shouldn't be transferred between swaps. Okay, that's a fair take. Semitic says, I think boycott is a bad direction, at least long term anyway. The community has grown to be more, and you hurt too many good people here in the community. Yeah, I hear you. Nardstorm, hot take. I'm opposed to sexual harassment. There you go, Nardstorm. There you go. Very hot take. Uh, Agreed. The developers of Overwatch and the content creators are very much separate communities. Absolutely. Absolutely are. Hmm. Okay. I kind of agree with that Brig take. I also think that whenever we get more supports in Overwatch 2, people will start to be more accepting of certain supports being more situational. Healers aren't a thing. Supports are. Could be. Could be. Hmm. A Sombra meta sounds like a nightmare to me. It'd take every meta. You'd take every meta over a Sombra meta. Fair. Val wants to share the trick of if you tap spacebar at a certain speed, Mercy's wings don't pop out, so making her wing hitbox bigger only hurts low SR players. Only hurts low SR players. So I get what you're saying, Val, and like there's some truth to what you're saying, but I'm gonna let you in on a secret that not every GM uses the tech that you're talking about. So like yes, but how much is low SR? Is low SR everyone below what level of GM type thing? The counter to Doom is shooting him. There you go. There you go. Okay. If they are going to buff damage, can they please increase the response rate of Anna's sleep dart by like 0.1 seconds? Because I send out so many sleeps that should hit but don't. Oh yeah, those are annoying. When it's like, oh, it just barely didn't hit. Okay, see quite a bit of complaints about Sim recently. I think that's because she meta now, used to not see much hate towards her. Yeah, she hasn't gotten any stronger. People have just realized her strength. Shifting meta around her has helped a little bit, but it's mostly been people are picking up, oh, she's actually got strength. She's not as situational as people thought. She can be played on more than Lijiang Tower. Okay. I think I'll be a lot safer in the air from now on. It takes some practice, Parody. It takes some practice. Nardstorm. That's true about expectations. I don't get tilted by getting limited by Doom. I just get tilted when he burns all of his CDs to do it in the middle of my team and no one looks at him and he just walks away. Right. You get tilted because he should have been punished for that. You expected him to be punished for that and he wasn't. Yep. Okay. They actually did a specific buff on Doom several months ago that made us line up less during uppercut to make sleeps harder to hit in the air. Before that, he was fun to play against. Okay. Okay. Ignoring sim turrets is pretty tilting. Fair, fair. Okay, we've cut up on chat here, and I think we've really covered what we needed to cover here. If we wanted to talk about what is it in terms of heroes or metas coming into play as a result of this, it's a tough one. This is a lot of changes that they're making here. So Genji getting buffed means potentially you see Genji play. This probably matters. This probably matters in such a way that it makes Doomfist really good. I'm not saying he's going to be like, oh, for sure locked meta, but like that's meaningful. This won't actually matter at high levels of play. This matters, and this might matter enough to keep the Doomfist in check. Like you don't want to play Doomfist because there's constantly a hog, but is there really constantly going to be a hog? Because if you're running hog, you're not running if you're running Hog, you're not running D.Va or Sigma 99% of the time, and those heroes are better for the defense they bring to your team. That's always been like a defensive position, not always, but almost always for the history of Overwatch. The peel potential, the shutdown potential of Defense Matrix, and the experimental barrier is just amazing. Not having that on a team is really painful. We'll probably see a lot of Hog on ladder as a result of this. We'll probably see a lot of Doomfist on ladder as a result of this. We're buffing Wrecking Ball and Hog at the same time. That obviously has combo potential. I mean, like Wrecking Ball, Hog, Doomfist. Plus, we've buffed Genji whether we use him or not. That could be a hard dive meta. Like, that could be a hard dive meta that you look into there. It's weird to have Hog in a dive meta, but Hog doesn't get punished that much during divey stuff. And you could do a thing where you use him as part of the like, we're just going in a hard thing here. So you could see something interesting like that. That wouldn't be wild. Bo was already seeing enough play in terms of that kind of thing. The buff to Hog should do a little more to check the existence of this Moira dive, the Talon dive thing that we've been seeing. Buff here overall again helps because you can run a more serious dive comp. Genji's not good against that Talon dive comp that's come out to play, but I think we see enough other stuff. Yeah, it would be really tough for me to call an exact meta out of this. We can look at the existing things that are being played, but a lot of comps are being played right now. We're seeing Talon dive, we're still seeing some brawl, we're still seeing double bubble, we're seeing the ball zen poke comps. We could see the ball Zen poke comps ad hoc, maybe even swap their Zen, run something like that, and maybe even drop in a Doomfist or a Genji to go with it, and that would be reasonable. And you'd sort of be running at a. I'm gonna call that a poke dive hybrid, but really it's a dive comp. It's a pickoff comp. It's a dive pickoff comp. You could see something like that. Like I said, the Moira thing isn't going to matter. This is a tough one. That's probably the direction I'd lean. I'd probably lean in the direction of, hey, we're going to see something that is taking advantage of our tank buffs. Tanks are generally good predictors of the meta. But again, I'm hesitant to invest too hard in Roadhog being buffed, so I'm not full committing to that. You could see a reversion to Brawl is safe. Brawl is something everyone knows. Keep playing Brawl. Double Bubble, maybe. Double Bubble with Genji could be okay, but the problem that you run into is like again, I think this looks pickoffy. Like this is Doomfist is a pickoff hero. Genji's pickoff work specifically got buffed. Roadhog is a pickoff hero. Ball can enable pickoff heroes really well. Like I think we're gonna see something sort of pickoff based, divey pickoff based type thing. That's what this patch leans towards, at least enabling. The strength of other existing heroes may keep that in check, may say no, it is going to go to something safe like Brawl, but that would sort of be like without having given it serious, I've analyzed every single piece, I've scrimmed with it, anything like that. That would be my off the cuff, hey, this is something to watch out for answer. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if my low SR take, but I'd love a sim back on support rework and make her turret slow, but don't damage anymore. Okay. I mean, her turrets could just do less damage and still slow if you wanted to do that. But you could also, well, you'd have to give her something else to make her more supporty than that as well. But yeah. In the air, does it mean in the air in general or only in ult? Um, oh. No, it means only during ult because it's under Meteor Strike. So like how this is set up, it says Meteor Strike now speeds up the cooldown of his ability of his rate of his abilities while in the air, but this is a sub point. This is a bullet under Meteor Strike. So it's not when he's hanging in the air from an uppercut that his cooldown speed will increase. It's only when he's off the map in Meteor Strike, basically. I could see why that would be concerning. I still feel like Genji takes a backseat to other dive DPS. I suspect you're right. Short term. I suspect you're right short term. I feel like he's still just going to be a blade bot. You might be underestimating what good Genjis can do. What good Genjis can do with some of the combos may surprise you. Like walk up on someone, hit a combo, and they're just eliminated. And the counterplay that someone like Zen has, if they don't catch them ahead of time, is basically none. You might be surprised. That said, it may take a while, and it could be that like, hey, let's pretend Tracer and Doomfist get run, and then later Doomfist gets nerfed, and then Genji takes Doomfist's spot type thing. You could see something like that where Genji is fine, but someone else is going to have to get nerfed for him to take the spot, but he's strong enough to take a spot type thing. We'll see. Genji will still be a blade bot, but even worse. I don't know about that one. Do you think the hog change was necessary, or was it more so based off of the ult reduction thing they want to do with? I think it has more to do with Overwatch 2. I think this is them going, let's experiment on. I mean, it's an experimental patch, but when they actually launch this, it'll be let's experiment on Overwatch 1 because we don't care about that anymore. We're prepping for Overwatch 2. Let's do a little more, get a little more feedback for Overwatch 2 by doing this. Give Torb the multi-level turret again. That could be fun. Okay, I think that's going to do it for this one. If you guys have any final questions or comments, you can throw them up there. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do feel free to like or even subscribe if you're a new viewer and haven't done that yet. We do professional match analysis here. We go over patch notes like this. Sometimes we cover the news, Overwatch, or other video game type stuff. We do a lot of VOD reviews. We do pro player reviews. We do lots of stuff here. And go ahead and subscribe if any of that sounds appealing to you. Thank you once again to the super chats that we had coming in from Adam Nicholas and Sheldon Krieger here. And with that, I think we are good to go. Thanks, guys.